Hello there, welcome to Positive Changes, a self-kick podcast. I'm your host, Shelley F. Knight. I'm a former nurse and clinical hypnotherapist, turned podcaster and author of Positive Changes, a self-kick book, and Good Grief, the A to Z approach of modern day grief healing. In each episode, I aim to share my clinical, spiritual, and personal experience to help you feel inspired to create your own positive changes in life. Fear not, it's not just me. Each week, I will bring on a new guest and they will share their authentic story of positive change and the tools that they used on their journey. So, if you're ready to be inspired, let's go. Today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing Pierre Pradervand.
Suddenly I read in the Sermon on the Mount the words of Jesus, "Bless those who curse you." But of course, Pierre, it's so simple. You simply have to bless them. And there and then, I started blessing. In their goodness, in their peace, in their joy, in their abundance, in their family life, in everything, in their work, in everything you can imagine.
He's just amazing. I discovered Pierre many years ago when I read his book, Messages of Life from Death Row. And more recently, I read 365 Lessons to Heal Myseld and the World. And Pierre's been doing that his life, healing himself, but also the world. He's the most amazing 84-year-old gentleman who's written over 20 books, and he's been making positive changes for decades, labouring most of his life for social justice, particularly social justice for women. So it's an honour, a pleasure, a delight to welcome Pierre Pradervand. Today on the show, I am absolutely honoured to be joined by Pierre Pradervand, who's a writer, speaker, and workshop facilitator. So hello there, Pierre.
Hello.
Thank you so
much to be with you, really. It's such a joy.
Oh, bless you. Now, I'm a little bit of a fan because you wrote a book many years ago about death row, and you've got a new book out now.
But not on death row, on other topics. But I am just going to start a third book on this inmate who was on death row. We've gotten him out of death row, and he's transforming a prison of 2,200 inmates. It's just amazing. We can speak about that later if you want to.
Bless you. So you've been a busy man because you've been creating positive changes for decades. So please do share what you've been up to.
I've been trying to. I'm now 84 and I'm 100% active. I have 17 days, 7 days a week. So I'm not exactly retired. I gave courses on retirement a few years ago. And I said, I taught them all the right things, but I said, I'm never going to retire. So I was raised in England during the war. As a matter of fact, we were bombed out twice. That was an interesting experience. Because I always say that the British gave me a very important cultural heritage. They gave me a sense of fair play at the time in the mid last century. It was very strong in England, especially in schools. And they gave me a sense of humor, a wonderful sense of humor, because the Swiss have many qualities, but certainly humor is not their first quality. So it helps get through life so much easier.
It truly does, doesn't it? If you're not laughing, you're probably crying or somewhere in between.
Exactly. And then I went to classical high school, Greek and Hebrew and Latin. I know the Hebrew was at university. I did 2 years theology, which is completely the wrong road, but everything's useful in life. it was later very useful for me to understand why I would never go down that road. And then I studied sociology. And when I finished university, United Nations, two organizations of the United Nations, this was in the 60s, listen well, they offered me a life contract with a salary at least 30% above the Geneva salary, at least 2 months vacation instead of 2 weeks in Geneva, and special shops, and no taxes. The international civil servants didn't pay any taxes. And I thought, Pierre, have you come on earth to have a nice little house, a lovely little wife, 2 sweet children, a lovely little car, and just drag on like that? I don't think I've come on earth for that. And I left for Algeria without even a contract, just after the Boumediene government, the military, had chased the original founder of Algeria, Ben Bella. And I'd met the Minister of Labor at the International Labor Office. That was with the earlier president. And I arrived at the Ministry of Labor. I arrived in Algiers port the afternoon. Next morning, I went to the ministry. And fortunately, the Ministry of the Director of Works, as they called him, recognized me. And they had such a desperate need for cadres, how do you say them? You know, people in guiding positions, because 1 million French had left Algeria. And the country had absolutely no people to take on leading positions. So I was welcomed open arms. And again, the United Nations, the International Labour Office, a few months later offered me a salary 3 times, at least 3 or 4 times the salary I was paid by the Algerians. And I said, no, because that wasn't my aim. It wasn't to earn money. And I did research, sociological research for an Algerian organization, which was absolutely fascinating, because we interviewed women and men separately, over 2,000 couples all around the world, all around the country. And that we had some amazing experiences. That's where I discovered real patriarchy was in Algeria, which was also almost 100% Muslim country. And in one area of the country, the average number of children, which used to be about 3 or 4, the average, which or used to be 6 or 7, the average fell by half. And after 2 days, one of our astute women interviewers discovered that mothers did not count their daughters in the count of children. If they had 7 children, 4 daughters, they said, I have three children. There were 3 sons. The women didn't count. And for me, that was, experiences like that, and there were many, were really a shock and awakened me to the plight of the woman in the third world, in most countries of the third world, and how privileged we were in the West, although there is still a heavy layer of patriarchy, although that has improved tremendously in recent years and is improving and will one day completely disappear. And then I went to my doctorate at the University of Michigan, came back for the most wonderful organization I ever worked with in my life, in West Africa, the American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker organization, organized the first meetings, conferences on family planning in an area where in some countries like Niger, the average number of children per woman was 9.
Oh,
That's
wow.
average. In Switzerland today, it's 1.7. 1.7. There it was 9. And so it was family planning was rather necessary. And then I went on to create it. And it made it very exciting. It was the most exciting professional experience of my life. I created an international magazine for the grassroots, the literate grassroots, teachers, nurses, rural extension workers, the very rare people in rural areas who could read and write. And it was so exciting because we were constantly innovative. We were the first magazine in the whole of Africa to have an article on female circumcision. And in many other areas, we innovated. And that was so exciting. And then I came back to Switzerland in the early 80s. And since then, I've done various activities. But since 92, I've been working full time as a trainer and writing. I started writing, and I'm publishing 2 books this year, 2 books next year, and I've published in all. Well, I will have published by the end of next year close to 20 books in 12 to 15 languages. So I've had quite a busy life.
Quite a busy life, yes, Pierre. I think you have had quite a busy life. Bless you. You've been such a powerful leader in like women's rights and like family planning and family circumcision. I had no idea.
And I have a wife compared to whom I'm a little bum in this area. She created a foundation, Women's World Summit Foundation. If you go on internet, you'll find WWSF, Women's World Summit Foundation. And for me, it's one of the most important topics in the world today. I don't think humanity would have been ravaged by wars like it has been if women had been in their rightful position. I think women are the better half of the human race, and men better learn that quickly and really share power and really accept they have such a lot to learn from women.
Bless
I hope you can distribute this interview a lot, not because I'm speaking, but because the topic is so important. And you guys out there, you need to really start changing.
Bless you. Thank you so much for sharing your passion. And I know you share your words. So I'm really aware. I mean, I read your first book, like The Letters from Death Row, but you now have this wonderful book, 365 Blessings to Heal Myself and the World. So you're still making this great difference in the world. How did the book come about?
Well, I think that's maybe the best book I've written. I if you really want the real story, you want the real story of how the book came about?
I always want the authentic story, Pierre. Yes.
I can't give you anything less in any case. It's at least 30 years old, the story. I was working for a group of NGOs, non-governmental organizations in Switzerland. And I loved my work. It was very, very modestly paid. Again, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had offered me a very prestigious and well-paid job, and I took a very poorly paid job, but I loved, and doing something completely new, that is to say, introducing programs on third world issues in public schools. That was the 80s. Nobody was speaking of the third world at the time in the school system. And I just loved my work, and I wanted to organize a roving exhibit from school to school on hunger in the world, because I've lived many years in the third world. In Senegal, Africa, I lived for 5 years between 2 shanty towns, and I mean about a couple of 100 yards from each one, with whom I had narrow contact. And so I knew what hunger was. I've seen hungry people every day for many years. And I gave the budget to the organization. They said, sorry, Pierre, we don't have a penny for that. And you have to do without your organization. Well, I took out at that time at least, or at least £10,000 out of my pocket, out of my till, to organize this roving exhibit, which went very well, was spoken about in the press. And at the same time, I joined a world campaign that started in the States called the World Hunger Project, which has as its aim the end of hunger by the year 2000. And there was one guy in these organizations who hated my guts. He was a militant atheist, and there was something in me that disturbed him very much from this point of view. And these organizations convened me to a meeting. They first told me, you must not speak about this American Hunger Project in your schoolwork. We don't like you speaking about it. I think they were a bit leftist and anti-American also. And I accepted that, but I continued to speak of the slogan, the end of hunger by the year 2000, because I was one of the founders of at the time, the largest grassroots peasant farmers in the whole of Africa, based in Burkina Faso. And one of our main organizations had the same slogan, the end of hunger by the year 2000. They know what the end of hunger means. The people who said you don't have the right to say that don't know what it means. And so I stopped speaking about the campaign, but I continued speaking of the end of hunger by the year 2000. I was convened then to a meeting without any minutes. No minutes were taken, convened and run by this gentleman who hated my guts. And he opened the meeting by saying, I am an atheist, which had nothing to do with the meeting. And they told me, either you stop saying we can end hunger by the year 2000 or you quit your job. Shelley, these are people who are fighting organization, officially receiving funds from the public and from the government to fight hunger, telling me not to speak about hunger. As one says, they're a bit cocky up there. There's something not screwed right there. And so I took 2 days to think, and then evidently I quit my job because it was committing harakiri to accept something that was so ethically and humanly wrong, totally wrong. So I quit my job, and then I developed Shelley. You cannot imagine. Is it Kelly or Shelley?
Shelley.
Shelley, yes, sorry. Shelley, I'm sorry. And I developed the most incredible resentment against these people, and especially this guy who'd set the whole thing in motion. It was eating me up, Shelley. I used to wake up in the morning under the shower. I was thinking about this, brr, 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 walking the street, doing the supermarket. This became what psychologists called an obsession, something I just could not trace. It was horrible. And I meditated, prayed, read all sorts of spiritual texts, made moments of silence, nothing doing. And after months of this, suddenly I read in the Sermon on the Mount the words of Jesus, bless those who curse you. But of course, Pierre, it's so simple. You simply have to bless them. And there and then, Shelley, I started blessing them in their goodness, in their peace, in their joy, in their abundance, in their family life, in everything, in their work, in everything you could imagine. First, it was in the head because I wanted to obey to what I thought was a profound spiritual command. But then very soon it moved to the heart. because blessing is 100% heart energy. And suddenly, a few months later, 3 months later, I started blessing people in the street, on the bus, in the train, in the supermarket, everywhere. And it became such a joy, Shelley. Blessing became such a joy. I couldn't stop. And I used to take the train a long time, often at that time. I used to travel the whole length of all the trains I took to be sure to miss no one, blessing everything one on that train. And then a few months later, I was preparing a talk for an international youth meeting. The theme of the whole conference was healing the world. And that's a lovely a lovely theme. And while I was writing my conference, suddenly I received literally the only time in my life a text. It was literally, I was like a scribe under orders. I was under dictation, Shelley. It's never happened to me before or since in my life. And my hand could hardly follow my pen. And out came this one-page text, The Gentle Art of Blessing. I have a website on it, www.gentleartofblessing, all linked.org. Okay? So www.gentleartofblessing.org. And we have an extraordinary webmaster. And she wrote for this, for the homepage of the website, this extraordinary text too. No, sorry, I mean, she put incredible music to my text on blessing. And it's on the homepage of the website. You really have to look at it, and listeners too. I repeat the address, www.gentleartofblessing, all linked, gentleartofblessing.org. And I'm sure you will enjoy her piece because it's so incredibly inspired and beautiful.
Bless you. I love when you're saying you're walking up and down and the train and just blessing everyone. But for anyone that might not know, how do you define a blessing? What is a blessing to you?
I defined it as sending focused energy to a person or a situation. For instance, I have in Geneva many years ago, I created a blessing group where we meet every 2 weeks just to bless individual people, requests, or world situations. God knows there are enough of them. And we spend our evening just blessing, quietly, not out loud, quietly. And it's such a lovely practice, because so much of the time our thoughts just wave on into the atmosphere, or much worse, which is more frequent, are caught up by some kind of advertising. And that enables us to stay centered on what really matters in life.
I think that's beautiful. So anyone can send a blessing. It's just like a focused intention with absolute love.
Exactly. Jesus told everyone, just bless. He didn't say that to priests or rabbis or whatever. And I hear still so many old-minded people who say, but only a priest or a pastor can bless. Not at all. That's not what Jesus said. And it's a universal practice all around the world in many other cultures and religions. And you don't have to belong to any religion. You just have to have a loving heart.
I think it's beautiful. I'm just so aware that we live in a world where there's just so much judgment. We judge ourselves, we judge others. So how can people start being less judgmental of each other each and every day?
judging. No, to stop judging, start blessing. Bless, bless, bless. You cannot judge and bless. It's absolutely impossible. It's a firewall to any judgment of any sort.
So always say like, what's the one positive change people can make today? So would it be the blessing, that intention of absolute love from the heart, or there are other tools you've used to create your life as it is today?
The other tool I'd like to mention right at the end of the show. Did you say that you'd ask me to give a concrete example?
Yeah,
Of something
please do.
people can apply. So I prefer keeping that for the end of the show. See, it's been so powerful. I've written a whole book on it.
Yeah, you can share that now.
Okay. Well, one time I lived on a Swiss mountain above Lake Geneva, and I had wonderful spaces to do my jogging with the neighbors' dog running after me, and it was so beautiful, and the smell was so incredible. And then I moved into the center of Geneva where my future wife lived, and it was on one of the most polluted and noisy streets of Geneva. Not exactly the place to go around jogging in winter in a slushy snow. So I purchased one of these home trainers, which mimics the bicycle.
Oh,
I
yeah.
still do that every morning. I still do that now every morning to keep myself in good shape. And wait, sorry, I just lost my frame of thought. Oh yes, so I threw myself into this exercise with great vigor and great enthusiasm. And after a few weeks, I started having strong pains in the chest. And I completely lost my energy. And for 3 days, I dragged myself through the apartment, literally dragged myself, feeling awfully miserable and victim of the situation. And we have a very beautiful, beautiful view from the living room on Geneva and the lake and the mountains beyond. And one day, midday, I was sitting in my armchair, feeling very, very miserable for myself. And suddenly, something, I can't use another word, something threw me up, arms outstretched, legs outstretched, and I started saying, yes, 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 for 2-3 minutes, very powerfully. The pain, the weakness went away instantaneously. And I started doing my exercises with the same vigor and exercise and energy as before. And this experience was so powerful. For years in the street, I would walk around saying, yes, 1, 2, yes, 1, 2, yes, 1, 2. And it was so powerful. And then I finally wrote a book on it. It's not a huge book because my publisher has been very innovative in the French-speaking field. He's inaugurated a series of very short books, which can be read in a couple of evenings, but which contain the essential of a topic, for instance, on personal development. And I wrote one of these 90-page books on just the big yes to life. In French, it rings better, le grand oui à la vie. But the sense, the meaning is the big yes to life. So
Where did that come from? That was it like a channeling or a spiritual moment?
You call it what you want. All I can say that I was propelled upwards as if by a rocket, held my hands like this for 2-3 minutes and said, yes, 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 with deep conviction. And again, David Hawkins that great psychiatrist, and one of the greatest psychiatrists of the last century, and the States, and who became a spiritual thinker, says the word yes is the most powerful of the human language. Just think of it. I'm not going to develop this in this program because it would request a much longer development, but the listeners, you just think about this when you get home or when you have a quiet moment, and try and feel, not think about, but feel the power of the word yes. Behind that word, there is incredible power. Try and feel it.
I love that. So thank you so much for sharing today. We've spoke about the blessings. We've got that real focus, and you're just sending it, into the most negative person or negative situation. But then you have to do one thing today, that one positive change that we can all do. It's start to not just say yes, but feel yes to yourself, to life, and all other opportunities.
Exactly. That's what I would suggest. At least try it out. And I'm pretty sure many of you will be convinced.
Pierre Pradervand, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've had the most wonderful life, and I think you've been creating positive changes for yourself, but certainly the world as you've gone through. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing with us.
Shelley, it's been such a delight talking with you. I have many of these podcasts, but today has been very special, very unique, really. I don't say that just to satisfy you, but I think you feel it comes from the heart. Thank you. It's been a joy talking with you.
Thank you so much. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you subscribe and leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, you can buy Positive Changes, a self-kick book from all online book retailers or from ShelleyF9.com. If you need a dollop of positivity until the next episode, come like and follow us over on Facebook at Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. As always, I've been Shelley F. Knight, and you've been amazing.